morning. I am newly selected, and I've been at the Water Development Board since October, and I'm going to keep saying until someone calls me out. And I'm not a scientist, but I am honored to introduce the next group. But before I do that, I thought when I joined the board, I'm a lawyer, and I thought I had a pretty decent grasp on law and water. And I've been working in and around the state government since 1999. I'm dating myself, but it was a pretty active time in water then. And here we are again, and it's a pretty active time again. I know that every day when I think I've learned more and enough problem, I need to learn more and more and more. And John Dupnik, who's here, and I'm going to introduce him up here in just a few moments, but he is the Deputy Executive Administrator at the Water Development Board for Water, Science, and Conservation. And bless his heart, he has had so many conversations with me over the last 4 months. I mean, you probably see me 2 or 3 times a week, bless you, and your wonderful staff. And I know we've got some Water Development Board staff here, and it weren't for them, I would be in a heap of trouble because I did not know enough. But God doesn't always call the prepared; He prepares the called, and I'm thankful for that. So thankful for you, John. And what I do know, even though I'm not a scientist, is that this is so important. I'm going to pile on from what our keynote said and what Chairman Foster said and tell you thank you. And thank you to Sol Ross and the Meadows Foundation. Thank you to the organizers and to the participants. And met a rancher yesterday that hadn't come to anything like this before. She's excited to be here. And I said, "Are you part of your water planning group?" And she said, "No, but I might be." Renee, are you out there? Anyway, we had a great conversation yesterday. And if I said it once, I say it a dozen times a week. Are you part of your water planning group? And we need public input. And we don't just need it because of folks like me who are still learning the process. And I say all the time to staff, okay, don't worry, we're going to get public comment on that, and I'll understand it more when we get that public comment, if we want that interaction. But at a place like this and at a time like this, this public conversation is so important because we're not all scientists and we're not all going to be, and that's okay. We can learn from one another. And I know that I may not be the most popular person at a cocktail party anymore, or standing in line at a grocery store because all I want to do is talk about water. The more I learn, but it really does take those conversations. We've got to go and we've got to talk with our communities. We've got to talk with the friends at the grocery store tonight, or your Uber driver, whoever's bringing their stuff to your door, and talk about it. It's important. And it's important even for those of us who are not scientists, but where the rubber hits the road is the science. And that's what we're about to hear about now. John Dupnik, in his first conversation with me, said, and I'll quote, and it's not ours, it's actually Kathleen Jackson, who's a commissioner at the Public Utility Commission. She's come previously at the Water Development Board, and now we're thankful that she's continuing her service there. But she said that better data makes better science makes better planning makes better policy. And I see a representative in the audience, and we're going to keep learning, and we're going to keep adding to our data and our science because we need that good public policy, and we need to be able to be conversant and be able to talk to our policymakers and our friends in line at the grocery store and at cocktail parties about these things. So I'm honored to be here. I thank you so much for being here. And John, without further ado, if you'll come up and you can start our panel discussion. What if John do?
Thank you, Director Morgan. Now, panelists, come on up. It's not just me, I promise you. Hey, you'll thank all of us for that, but we've got a full panel of really smart people. Come on up, guys. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is John Dupnik. I'm with the Texas Water Development Board, and thanks so much, Director Morgan, for that very gracious introduction. I gotta tell you, we've been incredibly impressed with Director Morgan. She says she's new, she's only been there for a few months, but it's been very impressive how quickly she's gotten up to speed and become a champion for our agency and our program. So thank you, Director Morgan. Really appreciate you for that. Also, thank you to the organizers of the conference and extending the invitation to be in our panel and really featuring the importance of this topic of data, of science, of making decisions based on the data. I really like the previous speaker's quote about it's encouraging that we're using data rather than guesswork. Be aware really focusing on that long-term view. And that's what we're here to talk about, is grounded in science and the value of that information that helps the decision making. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize that this is an extraordinary time. I don't know, in case you missed it, there was a hearing on Tuesday. House Natural Resources convened an interim hearing before there were interim charges. So kudos to Chair Pierce for doing that. And there were only two agenda items. The first one was labeled, how was it styled? It was labeled Oxford Conditions and Oxford Sustainability. And there was another panel on groundwater districts and management. And the entire discussion, of which I always apologies for anybody that had to see that, I was up there a lot. But the entire discussion was about the value of data, about the need for data to support decision making, about managing the sustainability of our aquifers. And I thought I was in a different universe, because we have been thinking about this and talking about this for a long time. But the fact that the word sustainability was used so often, the value of science-based decision making was used so often, just so encouraging and refreshing to hear our leadership focus on that topic. So it's a 7-hour hearing. I'm in there a lot. I apologize, but I encourage you all to go back and listen to that discussion. Very revealing in a lot of ways, and kind of an indicator of priorities of ours. So I'm going to start off by introducing our panel, and we're going to set the stage just briefly for a little background information on data collection efforts around the state. Then Kevin's going to focus in on the water resources here in the far western parts of the state and the complexity of the systems. Let me first start with introduction. So in the far right, Trey Griffiths. He's the GM of Presidio County Groundwater Conservation District. Underground Water Conservation. That Dayton district, I gotta tell you, I know exactly what that district evolved into. Trey is the general manager, calling the practitioner of groundwater management. He's responsible for the work on the ground. He'll be presenting the perspective of the value of data and science in informing groundwater decisions. And then we also have Kevin Urbantic. And as a man of Polish descent, I had to check that they want pronunciation of his name, so I appreciate it. That can be challenging. I guess it's that big, of course. So, Dr. Liggett, of course, senior researchers at Stellenbosch University. And then Amy Bush, she represents GMAC 4, and she also works with Jeff Davis County Groundwater Conservation District. And so they will be presenting the full perspective of how data and science are used and valuable in terms of the work that they do at that level. So we're going to get things kicked off just quickly with a little bit of state setting. So Director Morgan mentioned that at the Water Development Board, science is kind of at the core of things. It's about statement, about data, about science, about policy. That is at the crux of what we do. But also, it all starts with that foundation of data. It's critical. It's a critical function of what our agency does and the purpose that we serve. We kind of provide that baseline foundation of information across the state. So I'm going to tick through these very quickly to just give you a sense of what information is out there, and it's available to all of you. So we're going to get some websites out there that you can take pictures of or just memorize, but this is information that's accessible to everyone to have. This first slide here is a look at the water quality data that we collect physically with our field staff. They fan out to go all across West Texas and actually physically collect these water quality samples. We cover the entire state about every 4 years. These data here are from about 2021. You see a concentration of biggest value alluviums up in the north part of this region. The igneous aquifers, and is that point up kind of in the middle, to where we collect the flooding water quality data, and also is out west. Again, just kind of giving a sense of the information that's out there. This next slide is the same region, this part of far west Texas, but this is representing the water level data that is collected. So this is depth to water. The red dots are the physical measurements that our staff have to drive all over Texas and gather the physical quantity, touches the top of water and record that information. And fun fact, our staff drove 125,000 miles since last year just collecting this information. It's a big state, y'all. And it takes a while to get out here, especially. The other thing to notice is that we've got automated recorder wells, automated recorder wells that are collecting data in real time. And those are those blue druids. And you'll see one in the Fort Davis area in Jeff Davis County, just to the north and west of us. And what I did is I pulled up the kind of information that you can get from this type of well. And this is on our website as well as also what we've got here. What our scientists love to use fancy terms. This is a hydrograph. This is an hydrograph of the water well data going back to year 2000. But the value in this data is not a single point in time, but it's the trend. It's what you see over time. You can see it kind of declining over time. It's not a big amount. It's only about 6 feet or so, but there's definitely a trend that is showing up. And this is really presented to let you know what data is out there and what you can see in terms of the long-term period record and the current information that we collect there. So we also have the report in progress. We've been around since 1957. We have predecessor agencies going back to the early 1900s. This was a report that was completed in 1961, booked in 61 to the source of Presidio County at the Boston area. And we have our field office. We do have a field office in West Texas. Not many people know that, but our field office in West Texas is focused on updating the information in this report so that you've got new and more current information. And is Cody Bjornson in the room? Is he here, Cody? Yeah, there you are. Say hi to Cody. He is our field office. I had a picture of you, and that was a whole build-up to embarrass you. Yeah. Well, not sure. I had a picture, but not sure how about this. Anyway, I'll embarrass him with Cody, promise. But Cody is on the ground. He's in offices out of Marfa. He's focused up on updating this report, and you've got a person here to be your liaison. And we thought it was important to have a presence out in West Texas. Thank you, Cody, for your work and all the miles you put in. And then I finally wanted to make sure that you all know how to get this information. This is our water data interactive database. The website is there as long. You probably just Google, it'll be easier. And all those blue dots is our data. Just to give you a sense of the data we've been collecting. We've got data going all the way back to 1895. Over 1.8 million water level measurements, 1.8 million water level measurements as data points that are accessible, among a bunch of other types of data through this website. I showed you what you can do if you zoom in. This is the alpine area. You can buffer here, grab some wells, and see all the records available for information. So all of you, if you're in this audience, you're interested in this, or you wouldn't be here. Just know that these data are available to be accessible to everybody, and especially water managers. Then finally, we're going to plug one more website. This is water data for Texas. This is not just groundwater information. It's mainly what I've been focusing on here. This also includes very important information such as drought, reservoir information, and no surprise to any of you, our reservoirs out here, but there are a few that information is available. We also have access to that groundwater database, the recorder well program I was telling you about, and text messaging. That's the weather station, real-time weather station data that we deploy also in cooperation with the West Texas business. So all these data are available to you. I wanted to land on this drought page stuff. And anybody that lives out here knows it's already dry. But on top of being dry, you guys have been in persistent drought at least since 2000. And it's been at the most extreme levels of drought. Deep red color is exceptional stage trend. The worst stage we've got. So we've got arid conditions on top of drought conditions, which of course is challenging across the board. All this information is available to you. I just wanted to give you a sense of what I'm doing to sort of set up this speaker section. Now I'm going to get over into calendar. I can flip for you. Yep. So, all right. Take it away, Joe.
That's him.
Hey, thank you. I think I can live with that. I want to add a little bit to the bio to let you know I'm on the County Water Conservation District, also the senior research scientist with the New Meadows Research Institute.
Yeah. More volume. Okay. All right. We say that again. I'm on the board of the County Groundwater Conservation District, senior research scientist for West Texas Water Center, and I work for Presidio County with data collection and data management. So I'm pretty involved in groundwater and surface water issues of West Texas, and my task here is to kind of introduce the West Texas water situation. We saw an aquifer map yesterday, maybe one or two. I put the map up here. I didn't label all of the aquifers, but what I did label are a few I would talk about, and some other features, surface water too. So John mentioned the ABS aquifer. That's the big blob that includes all three counties, Jeff Davis, Presidio, and Brewster. I've got a location up there for San Solomon Springs, and Paul Foster already introduced that to us very well. We have a lot of knowledge about that spring system, and it has an impact on KC Ranch in a way that we can study some of that flow system that most likely feeds Balmoral. We can also see up there the PVA, the Cepecas Valley Alluvium aquifer. The CRCA is Captain Reef Complex. That's a really important aquifer for the flow system that I go to the KC and ultimately San Solomon Springs. We've got West Texas Bolson, this WTBA out there. That's another one of the recognized aquifers. I'd like to brag on Trey's work in Presidio County and the fact that we've got about 22 wells that are continuously monitored just in Presidio County, and you can see the dots for those, the triangles. In Mesa Marathon Aquifer, we have a new model in development, the conceptual model right now. Again, one of those that the board recognizes. Pretty important out there is ETPA, Edwards Trinity Plateau Aquifer. That's one of the major aquifers that's in our part of the world, including eastern Brewster County. I'm going to talk about the surface water and groundwater interaction between that aquifer and the Rio Grande this afternoon in a lightning talk at a place called the Lower Canyons that you can see on that map too. And then I guess for aquifers, the St. Helena, South Brewster County. If you look at the aquifer maps in Brewster County, we're almost empty. We don't have any. It looks like, but there is a pretty large aquifer in South County called the St. Helena, so you can see that one. And then lastly, Rio Grande, Wild and Scenic River, as transition to surface water, is the boundary between the U.S. and Mexico. And then also the Pecos River is a pretty important river for us here too, and I would actually give credit to the Devils a little bit farther east also. So there's our sort of, in my opinion, important parts of sort of West Texas surface water and groundwater system. So I think that's good for the intro right there.
Yeah, so, well, I'm not, what?
Now,
Shut up, on.
Okay.
Now it's working. The voice of God.
I didn't, man, I thought I'd have to get on it like a rock star, like you did. Get on it. I need to get way out here. Sorry about that, y'all. Feedback and way too loud. Okay. All right, so I'll be moderating this panel and this discussion. That's really loud. I don't know who's got the 2 years involved in that. Say here. Okay.
that's how the two.
That's not big. Just about this.
It's a way better idea.
Sorry about okay, all right, here we go. I'll be moderating this panel, but in our conversations kind of building up to this, we thought it'd be really useful to have everybody from their perspective, from the district, from the academic who works with districts, to hydrologists, the regional planner, to really talk about some of the key challenges related to this area and how they use data, how they use science, or what data and science are needed to really address some of these key challenges. So we're going to keep going with Kevin. And Kevin just kind of laid out some of the key water resources out here in West Texas region. And ultimately, as mentioned earlier, the complexity of the systems and their interaction of the systems. So Kevin, I'll open it up for you. Tell us a little bit about some of those challenges that you see in terms of the water resources out here, the complexity of them, and what is really needed to further understand them better.
Okay. First thing I want to say is I like to say that I've been trying to collect data on West Texas water resources for decades. And I always like to say I've got my finger on the pulse, of the system, the water in the system. And how do you do that? I work with Presidio County. It's measuring groundwater levels with continuous monitors, that kind of thing. On the Rio Grande and Pecos River, we're out there measuring stream flow and stuff and looking at doing these things that are called gain-loss studies, where you can associate changes in water in the river to baseboard contributions, as Ryan was talking about. It's really important to recognize surface and groundwater are both the same thing, even though we try to treat it differently. So for me, data is also, Paul mentioned about how difficult it is to understand groundwater. This is this panel the title is Grounded in Science, and we're talking about something underground. It's hidden. It's very hard to understand. My take on that is I'd like to give credit to my colleague Steve Finch at Shoemaker and Albuquerque. He's the kind of hydrogeologist that first looks at the rocks. You have to understand your basic bedrock geology, and then relate water levels that you may measure in wells and that kind of thing. So you kind of really start at the ground level, and then add to them geochemical data or something like that. So that's my take on that.
All right, well, maybe we're going to hand off to you. You organize GMA4 in the districts within GMA4, groundwater conservation districts, and you're tasked with coming up, helping them develop their long-term planning goals. So talk to us a little bit about, you heard earlier that we really need to have the long view. This is key to that having a long view, that planning process. Talk to us about some of the challenges that you face trying to play the long term and how you really need data and science to help form those conversations.
Okay, thanks. I think let's start with the groundwater districts in this area. Is that better? Okay, let's start with the groundwater districts in this area. What we have here in Far West Texas, as compared to the rest of the state, are districts who are underfunded and understaffed. And they're doing it anyway, okay? Don't mistake me, they are doing it. Trey got funding last year, he's been doing it a lot longer than last year, okay? They're getting it done. The Texas way, the scrappy way, the we're gonna do it anyway way. And that's awesome, but it would be cool if they were, better funded and better staffed. And I don't know really how to go about that, but it is a challenge we face in this area. So we're gonna list that first. We're gonna go second to the data. And you see these maps with all these cool dots, and that's awesome, but it is still not a whole lot of data for as large of an area as we have here. There's a couple of things that play into that, I think. One of them is there's not as many wells here. And so as you start looking, in other places, there were in some rural areas that you would think maybe would be similar, but in those areas, we have 3 wells every quarter section to feed the pivot. So there's plenty of wells for your scope to take down. That's not the case here. And so there's fewer wells to choose from to start with. And then we have what I'm going to call the West Texas Rural Challenge. Because the rural, I'm from the Panhandle. Tim and I both from the Panhandle, okay? We're from the flat earth part of Orange. We grew up in places where you could stand on a good flat rock and see your dog run away for 3 days. And the difference between those folks and these folks is not much, okay? If you've got a 7-mile road and you've got 4 people on that live on that road, and you've got a new car driving down that road, Linda, if you forgot to tell your neighbors that your daughter got a new car before she came to visit you, it is your fault that you got 6 phone calls, okay? That is on you. And that is awesome, okay? It's awesome. But it feeds into this idea that it's difficult for our strange pickup to go driving down the road looking for data. We have got to have some really good relationships with landowners to go get out on the properties where these sparse wells are so that we're able to collect the data we need to figure out what's going on. I think in the past there was probably some misconceptions about, those government folks are going to come take our water and they're going to come tax our water. We can't even get taxes for ourselves, guys. So I think that it seems like in the last, I'm going to say 10, maybe 20 years, there's been a lot of inroads made, particularly in this area, to develop the relationships with the landowners who can get us to the data we need. We need to know where those springs are. We need to know how deep the water is. We need the well log to know what aquifer the well's completed in. You'd think it'd be easy to look at a dot on a map and decide what aquifer it's in, but you guys, that is complicated. This is a complicated system out here. There's a lot of overlying things. There's a lot of interlocking things. We need a good well log to figure out what we're actually looking at out there. And so that all plays into this data issue. If we don't have enough data, we can't have good policy. We can't make good decisions. And so we are just driving hard, everybody on this stage, to collect all the data we can collect. The only other thing that I will say is the other challenge we face is what is coming. And for you guys, it's probably not 50,000 population growth, but it may be data centers. It may be an oil and gas play. It may be, I don't know, Bitcoin mining. That may be some tourism people that want to throw a big party in pasture somewhere. You know, I don't know. I don't know what's next. And so
That would be true.
that trying to anticipate what is the next big use is kind of the next, the other challenge of what's happening in Chile.
Yeah, this is a 50-year planning window, so that uncertainty of what's coming in 50 years, much less the next year. I see that seems to be a recurring theme. How many data centers are there going to be data centers? Crypto, we need hydrogen production. There's so many new things that we haven't planned for, which, again, next year, 50 years is a challenge. And why is your dog running away? Let's say that. Let's maybe conversation. Yeah. No offense. Makes sense. All right, Julie, let's sing them off to you. Again, you're the general manager presented procedural underground water. Actually, that's great. I call you guys the practitioners of groundwater management. You're on the ground doing it. You're making rules. You're dealing with your landowners, with your stakeholders. You've got to work with what you've got. So talk to us a little bit about the challenge of managing a district, how data informs some of the decisions you make, and really what you need to be able to do your job.
Yeah, I think you really identified it there. I think my co-panelists have also identified it, is that we've got to look for the opportunities in our challenges. When I became general manager in 2022, I had already been the board chairman since 2018, and we were at the Dupnik district. We had about $10,000 we were getting from our county commissioners when I started to run our district. We had really no monitor belts. And so I just kind of worked to rebuild the board. I got a half landowners, large landowners on my board now. And because we're such a small district, we don't really have a lot of demand right now. There's not a lot of users. We don't really have appreciable agriculture, for example. Our main users are our towns. The biggest town is about 5,000 people. The whole county is about 7,000 people. And so we don't have a lot of industrial use. So that kind of sets up the context, that I started with. And the board and I kind of, my Groundwater District board and I have kind of been working then over the last few years to get ready, to get ready for these challenges that my co-panelists have identified. And so we felt like we really needed to get more data. We felt like we needed to get more funding. And we also felt like we needed to start working on trying to come up with a consensus, build a consensus to get ready for those challenges. At the time, it seemed like it might be El Paso. I mean, I love El Paso. Hello to all my friends in El Paso. But they own a big ranch in the northwest of the county that's always been kind of scary to folks. It's the reason my groundwater district was created in the 90s. But we also recognize that there's maybe going to be something else that comes along, and you don't even know what it's going to be. And so the challenge for us has been to get more data, get more funding, and have more outreach, and really try to get people informed about water issues, get them thinking about water issues. And so that's kind of the context that I'm working in. And I work real closely with both of these people, and so but that just sort of gives you our particular perspective in Presidio County. Everywhere is different, but that's kind of where we'll deal with it.
All right, so we're going to switch over to the next topic of what's happening. And just kind of recap, there are a lot of challenges if you picked up on that from each of their perspectives. And from just the understanding of the system, very complex. Hydrogel, the very aerodynamic, the interaction of the systems is complex and difficult to understand and characterize. And he laid out a whole slew of things. It's a problem with the government there. But the uncertainty of the future, there are the data on the resources, and then tracking in respect also everything you laid out. Not quite the tools you need to do the job. So now I'm going to switch gears and talk about, as Amy put it, they're still doing it. The job still needs to be done. Planning needs to be done, the resource needs to be managed. And they're doing it the Texas way. So I'm asking each of them to talk to us a little bit about what's going on, what's happening, how they're improving the day when someone's available, and how they're developing what they need to make to do this hard job. And let's start with you, Kevin. How does some big news for the university? Obviously, the Meadows Research Institute, the endowment was announced. That's a big deal. It's going to be focused on the issues of water in Texas. Tell us a little bit about the plans for the institute and how you guys can plug into addressing some of these challenges.
Okay, so we do have these get started. The logo's right here. We're very excited about it. What I'm going to do in my part of it, and I would like to point out that we have Dr. Kells and the Dr. Kelvin Delaney, so on the science faculty. On the science group at our MRI center. So what I'm going to do that's pertinent to this conversation is, for one thing, as part of the Brewster County Groundwater District, is that we've had an idea for a long time to develop management zones. Some areas around Alpine, for example, where we have subdivision blocks unable to have it, or double diameter or something like that. We'd like to develop DNC, each of these locals, to meet our science before we can do that. So we'd like to understand each of our systems a little bit better, because right now, in my opinion, the igneous aquifer is something that Aggie and I already, 2 years ago, it was called a quirky aquifer. It's not the kind of aquifer that's easy to understand. It's very anisotropic in its characteristics. So I'd like to kind of develop that system there, and we have zones instead of a whole county of aquifer. Another thing that we're looking at is the Salina aquifer that's in South Brewster County, that if you go to Churling or the Heatus, that's the source of the water supply down there. It doesn't show up on maps, as you maybe recall from my introduction. So we'd like to better understand that one, maybe get it recognized as an aquifer. We're kind of discussing that right now. It essentially is an extension of the Edgar-Trinity Plateau that aquifer originates. But the structure, the whole characteristic of the system is so different that we would not want to call it an extension of the Edgar-Trinity Plateau. We want to call it something of our own, like the Sangolina complex aquifer or something like that. So we'd like to understand that one a little bit better. And then when we look at surface water, we're working with the Rio Grande joint venture to do surface water stream restoration, doing projects we saw yesterday with rock structures, Beaver Dam, and you call them the brush weirs. That's exactly that. I'm contributing my expertise there in monitoring the success of those up ahead. So to me, the center needs to be looking at groundwater, obviously, but it needs to be looking at surface water too. The Picos to River and Water Sea, the Devils River, those are things that I attempt to continue to collect data.
And thank you, Kevin. You did not disappoint. For those of you that have anisotropic on your bingo card, or what would you get? Anisotropic equals perky. Yeah, well. Okay. All right, Trey, let's switch over to you. You're the practitioner of groundwater management. You can't sit around and wait for all these wonderful tools and data to come.
It's true.
It's true. But you guys have come a long way.
It's true.
And I'll say a little bit about what the district's doing.
Amy characterized it really well. We're very scrappy, and so we had to kind of get resourceful. We solved our funding problem by getting a new property tax passed with 85% of the vote in our district. So we've got a secure funding source to keep our district going. I think that shows that our stakeholders understand that we're a resource to them. We've proven we're a resource to them with our website and our data collection, which is the next step that we've taken. We got funding from USGS and from Horizon Foundation, thank you, Robert Potts, to start equipping these wells and start doing the kinds of very daily measurements, several measurements a day, the kind of granular data that we need beyond the state's annual measurements and their kind of district reporter wells. So we're all able to kind of weave that together. So we became a data provider to the National Groundwater Monitoring Network. We also serve our data to the Texas Water Development Board. And then we're also working on kind of filling that expertise gap. I'm on the steering committee for the Meadows Research Institute. Really excited to have something here locally that's focused on the water, that's going to graduate a lot more Kevin Urbanzics. He fills a lot of different roles. He does an amazing job, and we need more people like him. So I think that MRI is going to really get us there. And then really just, working with the state, having a relationship with the state, and that's really been exemplified through Cody, who was just called out. He came to us and was talking to us about this bulletin that had been published in the early 60s with data that had been collected in 1958 and 1959. Now, for all of our geeks in the room, we all know that that was right after the drought of record ended. And so it was also a period when Marfa was about 3 times the size that it is now. It was about 5,000 and some change. We're now at about 1,700. So this study includes 111 wells that were all measured, like I said, the late 50s. And so what Cody's looking to do is go onto those ranches and get those wells all measured again, and then kind of overlay that data with the late 50s data. So he came to our district and he said, "Hey, look, I need somebody that can help me open the gates." So I had my landowners on the board and myself. We called around and we've been able to get Cody into just about all those wells. He's also been able to add some other wells. And we think that those kinds of partnerships are really going to be the future. We've got to really work together, especially when you're in a region like this where all the groundwater districts have part-time employees like myself. We're talking about my groundwater management area, Hudspeth, Culberson, Brewster, Presidio, and Jeff Davis. Our annual budgets combined less than $1 million. So we're really going to need to rely on relationships with the state. We're going to need to rely on relationships with each other, and we're going to need to rely on relationships with all the different stakeholders if we're ever really going to get a handle on what we're looking at today and into the future. And so that kind of gives you perspective on what we're doing, and that's why I work so closely with these 2 people, with all my managers out here in the audience, and just trying to not just sit on our hands and say, well, we don't have the money, well, we don't have the expertise, getting out there and really trying to figure it out.
All right, Amy, we're going to hand over to you. And my question for you is, I mentioned that you coordinate GMA4, and GMA4 has a complex job at organizing the districts within the area and bringing them together to come up with consensus goals for each of those outcomes over the long term. And there are a number of factors in statute when you're setting up timeline to that the districts have to consider. Many of them are very technical in nature, involving data sets, viruses, and such. So, Amy, talk to us a little bit about how the planning group, how the districts are using those tools to plan for the future, and what else you need to be able to do it better.
First, I do not coordinate that. Trey coordinates that. I'm just the nerd.
She's the consultant.
So, then the first thing I want to talk about is we're in the process of finalizing with the state the model that this district or this GMA needs to use, particularly for the igneous and bolson aquifers. What we have come to realize is that there is very little data supporting the aquifer properties in that model. I think we figured out we had 1 pump test to develop the aquifer characteristics, the transitivity, the hydraulic conductivity, all the things that we need to make a model run properly. We had 1 pump test in the whole area to support that. Yesterday at GMA4, the district decided to get together and under one district's heading, apply for some of the technical research grant to do a bunch of pumping tests to develop some more data to support those models. So, John, Ashley, Natalie, if we would like some money, please. And we hope that, those types of data collecting things across the state is what that money is used for. That's what we desperately need. If we drill down from the GMA level to the district level, all those dots on the map have been collecting data, and in some cases for a very long time. We need to analyze that data. What is that data really telling us? Maybe we've been looking at, the county looks like this, but what we need to figure out is what do each individual officer look like within those counties? How does that compare to these long-term goals we've set? We need to really dive into the data we have and see what it's telling us. And as Kevin and Trey have talked about, that is being done, and it's only going to increase. There's another project that I just talked about yesterday with one of the districts here about, we're going to take this to the next step. And so, yes, we have to collect data. Yes, we also have to analyze that data and see what it's telling us. That's kind of the two things that this area is just driving towards.
Director Morgan, she said, please. Should I just go out right now? Okay. Thank you for that setup. I'm going to put in a shameless plug now. I meant to mention this from the top. But the legislature was generous in providing appropriations to our board to the tune of about $7.5 million over the next 2 years to provide grants to our conservation districts, specifically for the purpose of advancing research and science, also data collection, and recognizing this need. So here comes the plug, and you guys know that the application's period over January 16th. Deadline is March 13th. Spread the word. You guys know it. Thanks for setting up with sorry. Haven't it? And so I'm clear, GMA coordinator, GMA. Right, sorry. Got that weak style. Okay, so we're going to shift gears, and we're going to kind of wrap up. We're coming into the home stretch here. We want to be able to have times of questions. And so if you've ever seen me moderate people, I love to finish with this benevolent desperate question. It's kind of crystal ball magic walker question. What is your crystal ball vision and for where you want the region to go and what you want it to look like in the future? And also, like as you were, you said queen of the universe. Yeah, if you have all the power, what could be done to address these critical needs? Now we're focused on data needs, science needs. What are the technical tools? If you could just wave your magic wand and make it so that would help you address some of these key challenges we've laid out. So let's start with Trey. Let's start with you here.
Well, I think just kind of continuing down the path that we're on. Amy mentioned this project that we're all going in on together. That's going to be headed up by MRI, which is representing those kinds of relationships that we really need to be building. We really need to be fostering because we can't do it alone. So I'd like to really see a lot more of that. I'd like to see a lot more building on data that we have from the past. I think it's Bonnie Warnock said one time, "When's the best time to plant a tree?" 35 years ago. That's the second best time to plant a tree today. And so we've got a lot of the data that we're collecting now, but we really need data that goes back further. And some of that exists, but we aren't really accessing it as much. And then looking at sort of updating that moving forward. I'd like to see more of that. And again, I'd like to really see a lot more support from the state. I think this $7.5 million, it's a good start. But I think there's a lot of research that needs to be done, and I think the state can play a greater role in that. And then, of course, I'm super excited about MRI. I want to see that just expand. I want to see water professionals graduating out of there, scientists, people ready to run these groundwater districts, ready to run these utilities, and really kind of looking at how can we make this all a lot more resilient. Looking also at these riparian restoration efforts, that the joint venture is doing. How do we expand that? How do we take advantage of our stormwater? How do we take advantage of our rainwater? How do we reuse our gray water? So, you can tell I think about a lot of things besides groundwater, but it's all of a piece, and it's really the only way that we're going to be able to confront the challenges that we're seeing headed our way.
Jason. Dr. Kevin, King of the Universe. What's your vision for the future of the region, and what would be that thing that could help really address some of these challenges from a scientific data perspective?
Well, I'll say an obvious thing that would be great is lots of money, grant money, whatever. Let's just pretend that that's already there, but what would I do with it? One of the things, I mentioned those management zones. If we have more access to more wells, because we really believe that database we have in Brewster County is probably half of the total, and we really like to know more about all the wells that exist and what the information they could give us. One of the things we're doing is developing a limited use production permit. One of the we need more information to know how well that's working. Basically, if you have a parcel that's less than 10 acres, you're not exempt according to the Chapter 36. So we'll let you drill a well, but we're going to make you monitor. We're going to make you provide your production rates, just put a meter on it, that kind of thing. So if we could get that going and move forward and see how well those restrictions, they're not really restrictions because there'll still be a lot of water available. But how that works. And then if we move, this is Brewster County centric still here, if we move to South County, better understanding that St. Helena aquifer, it's not the same as its Edwards Trinity. And the reason is because it's part of this very complex and very fascinating West Texas geology, the volcanic history and the tectonics and laterite orogenies and things like that make that aquifer totally different than the Edwards Trinity that's actually to the east. So I'd like to have money, I'd like to have equipment, but I'd like to have a better understanding. I'd like to be that doctor with my finger on the pulse, but I want my patient to be more accessible. If you take your first aid class, you have to dispose of the wound. It's not a wound, but it's a geologic system, and I want to be able to look at better, have more access, maybe monitor wells that we could drill ourselves too. So those are the kinds of things that I think would help us, the crystal ball for the future, for at least for
Dr. Urbancic, MD,
with that
patient
analogy.
And why I put this question out there when we were prepping, Amy said, if I were queen of the universe, this is what I would do. So that's where the heck comes from. So Amy, you have the floor.
Okay, if I were queen of the universe, 3 things. Number 1, no frequencies and zits allowed in the same vase. Okay, so let me get on that. I'm sorry that's a cool one for me, but it is. Number 2, I need a teeny tiny submarine to go down there and just check everything out. So if there's any nanotechnologists in the room, here's your chance to shine. Number 3 is not really technical, but I believe all science really comes back to the relationships. And so number 3 is I wish that I could take this tiny fire in my chest and just beam it out to everyone here. And that little fire is fueled by my absolute certainty that the people that can solve these issues are in the room. You would not be here if you were not interested, if you were not concerned, if you were not invested. And working together, we can solve these challenges, we can face these, and we can make this a better place for our kids and our grandkids too. So,
All right. Well, I've asked this question before in other panels. Trying to miss an opportunity. I had one panel say, I would invent a time machine. Go back 35 years, plant those trees, start putting in monitor wells, start collecting data early. I have a panelist say, dresses with pockets? I don't even know what that means. Yeah, that sounds like a thing. I'm going to take a privilege here to add in my piece of it. And I really missed an opportunity. Again, Goss Natural Resources met on Tuesday. They had a hearing for 7 hours on this question. Where are the data that are needed? What information is needed? How can we fill the gaps? And I was asked specifically by Representative Buckley, and it came down to this: do you need more data? And it was a bit snarky in my response to take it back on. It was like, if you're asking a scientist if I need more data, the answer is always yes. But what I should have said, we actually have very robust data sets in many parts of the state. West Texas has got a lot of gaps to fill, but we've got data everywhere. We've got data on shelves. We've got databases on specific computers. We've got data scattered all over the place. But my dream would be a centralized system to connect all that information together so that the systems were connected, the data were interoperable is a word we like to use, the data were actually usable and functional and findable and accessible to everybody, researchers, resource managers, everyone. We've done a pretty good job, I think, at the board in providing those platforms, but there's so much information out there that is disconnected, so that would be my dream. So, we're called for that. All right, we've got a few minutes for questions, I think. Yeah, so let's open up the floor for questions. All right. Well, I think we need a microphone. I'll let you.
Let's go with the same thing.
Let's not share races.
Hi there. If I'm a landowner, we know what you need from the state on data and funding. If I'm a landowner, how can I participate? Call Trey. Tell us where the wells are that we can come measure. Tell us where the screens are. Let me let Trey tell you what else.
Yeah, so something else that's come up recently is one of my landowners on my board told me about not a lot, but a few wells are not able to produce. They produce, they're having to lower their pumps to put from sucking air. They're pumping at the regular rate, but they start sucking. And so there's something going on with those wells that is indicating that there's something going on with those aquifers. So we need landowners to tell us those kind of things. And now, fortunately, I've got landowners that are on the board, and they talk to each other, and they come back and they bring their concerns. But more landowners coming to our meetings, they're just telling board members, what's going on their land with their wells, because Brewster County, Presidio County, Brewster County, all these areas are so big, we can't know everything there all the time. And landowners know the resource the best. They know that area the best. And so, especially the ones that have grown up here and been out there forever. So that's how you can participate, really. And again, it goes back to those relationships and building those relationships with their stakeholders.
We're a landowner in the big white area underneath the FID. And we have a well up to building 20 meters up. So question, what data do you seek or the monitor that how can we participate?
Did you think that? Yeah, this person's killing it. Well, thank you. We would want to know if there was any data collected when it was dripped. Maybe some cuttings of logs, something like that. Or maintenance report might have that. But we would also want to do a water level measurement if it's successful. That's one of the things that kind of basis bits of information you get out of there. You put it, I stayed in there or saw it and measure the water levels. And if it looks like one that would be useful for long-term monitoring, we would consider asking if we could put one of those devices in there that monitors on a continuous basis. And Trey points out maybe we could put a rain gauge that to just recharge precipitation patterns or re-input the first. So we would definitely want to talk to you. Joe, not that he was here at Sydney, RGM's here. So Brewster County would be very interested. This.
Trey, my question is for you. I just checked the 24 census in Presidio County. There's 6,131 residents in Presidio County. And my direct question is, what is it going to cost us to do this research, and what is the cost benefit of that for those 6,131 people in our county? No one's talked about costs yet.
Well, so our tax rate, I think, comes out to about $6 a year for your average $250,000 worth house involved, for example. So the cost is very low as far as what you're paying in taxes. A lot of this research is going to be funded with grants and with grants, really mostly. And so I don't really know what the cost is. I mean, I can tell you our 22 monitor wells that we have right now probably cost about $150,000 to buy and install. And the benefit is going to be really understanding. If you view the aquifer as a savings account, and you view that water that's in there already as your principal, what I like to think of is all of this monitoring, all of this sort of trying to understand where the recharge is, how much precipitation we're getting, where is the recharge entering the aquifer. That's how you determine your interest that you're accruing. And so ultimately the goal should be to try to only live off the interest and draw as little as possible on the principal. At the moment, though, we don't really understand what our principal is. And so there's just been a lot of sort of assumptions made. Oh, there's an ocean of water in there. Oh, it's going to be fine. And I just don't think that's good enough. And so we have to recognize that groundwater is a property right. The landowner has sole discretion on what happens with that water within certain limits under the law. And we need to find out, in collaboration with those landowners, with those property right holders, what is our principle, what is our interest, and how do we ensure that our savings account is not depleted, so we leave nothing for future generations.
So the $6 is just a starting fund, correct?
It's used to fund the district. When you have a district, you have to have audits. You have to have. There's a lot of overhead that happens, and so that's a lot of that money. Unfortunately, goes to that. But the rest of the money is used to pay me a whopping $30 an hour, and also to fund some of this research and some of this work, help pay Kevin for some of the work he's doing, and it's actually very, very little budget compared to the value that people end up thinking being wanted for these efforts. Yeah. So,
You have it. All right, that's all the time we have, folks. Thank you so much for your attention.